Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at part 45 from the Hercules story from Ritchie's Fabulae Faciles. Now this is the last chapter in the Hercules story and it's called the Death of Hercules. So before we dive too far into it, like I always tell you in these videos, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a really good grasp on the vocab. So you can either pre-read the story and make your own vocab list, or you can find them from different commentaries. But one way or another, you want to make sure that you feel comfortable and that you have a good handle on the vocab, because it's really hard to understand what's going on if you don't know what the words mean. So always start there, make a Quizlet or whatever it is that you use, flashcards, and just make sure that you've got it down pretty well. The other thing that I encourage you to do is read the story aloud. So if you're reading this in class, find a classmate, read the story to them. They can read it back to you. Like I always tell you in these videos, you want to work on your speaking and pronunciation and your listening skills. Those will all help unlock Latin for you. You never want to shut them off, because it might be the key for you really to understand this language. And once you do that enough times, you'll start to catch the pattern of the language and hear different things. It'll just help you understand it a lot better. The last thing I always encourage you to do is do the read and reread method. So when it comes time to translate, read through the story, write down any problem areas you have, any words you don't understand or phrases, whatever they are, make a list. When you're done with your reading the whole chapter, go back and look at the list and try to fix any of the problem areas that you had. So if it's vocab, that's pretty easy, right? Just look up, the vocab and you'll figure it out. If it's grammar, that might be a little trickier, right? A commentary will help, but otherwise try to see if you can unpack what is actually happening in terms of the grammar, right? Look it up a little bit. There's different online tools you can use for stuff like that. Then go back and read the story again, and you keep repeating the process. And every time you do it, your list should get shorter and shorter until you're able to read through the whole thing. You understand it completely. You don't need any help. That's always the sign that you're ready to move on. Okay, so if you haven't done that yet, pause the video, go do it. But for the rest of the video, you want to use it as sort of a double check, just to make sure that you are on the right track with what you already did. Okay, so the story starts like this. You have Hercules, nihil mali suspicans, vestem quam licas atulerat statum induit. Paulo post tamen dolorem per omnia membra sensit, et quae causa esset eius rei magnum per mirabator. Okay, so you have Hercules, right? Suspicans is a present participle. It means suspecting. So suspecting nothing wrong. So the nihil mali there literally means something like nothing of the bad, right? It's that that genitive. But again, it just means he's not suspecting anything is wrong, right? He put on, or immediately put on, the vestem, the clothing, which Lycas, right, his friend, had brought, atulerat. Remember, they're doing the sacrifice to Jupiter at this point, to Zeus, and you're supposed to wear the white clothing. But Lycas has brought the clothing that's stained with the blood that Nessus gave Deianira. So you have this problem about to happen. Then you have Paulo. So this is the ablative of degree of difference, right? So it just means a little while after, right? Paulo post, you could say. So however, a little while after, or a little while later, he sensed it, right? He felt through all his limbs, per omnia membra, right? Through all his limbs, he felt dolorem, he felt pain, right? Because this is a poisoned robe. And mirabator, right? He was wondering. So that mirabator, it looks passive, but it's because you have a deponent verb here, right? So the miror mirare means to wonder or be amazed at. But wonder is probably the best translation here. So he was wondering what was the cause, right? You have the S there, the subjunctive. What was the cause of this thing, eios rei, right, of this pain? And he was greatly or very much wondering what was the cause of this pain, because he can't figure out why all of a sudden, he has shooting pains from putting on the robe. Then you go to the next line, and you have dolore paine ex animatus vestem detrahere conatus est. Illa tamen incorpore haesit, neque ullo modo abscindi potuit. Okay, so you have ex animatus there, which means like literally to be extinguished, right, or killed is kind of what it's getting at. So you have the participle there. It's a perfect passive participle. Okay, and again, ex animare means to like literally like breathe out, right? It's a way of dying. So you have paine, which means almost. So here it's saying that almost having died, right, ex animatus, almost having died from the pain, dolore, right? So he almost dies right away just from having the clothing on. He tried, conatus est, right? It's perfect tense. It looks passive, but it's a deponent verb, right? So translated actively. He tried to detrahere, to take off the vestem, right? So he tried to take off the clothing, right? It's really like a robe, right? It's kind of a good one. So he tried to take off the robe. However, illa, right? It is talking about the robe. So illa is referring back to the robe. So however, it haesit, it kind of stuck or clung, incorporate on his body. right? So it sticks to him and he can't get it off, okay? So then you have neque ulo modo abscendi potuit. So, and he was not able, neque potuit, right? He was not able to take it off, abscendi, right? To take it off or sort of like cut it off in any way. Ulo modo, tear it off, might kind of make sense there too. So he can't get the robe off. Then you have the next line. You have tum demum Hercules, quasi furore impulsus in montem oitam, rather, se contulet et in rogum quem summa celeritate extruxit se imposuit. Okay, so then at last, or finally, right? So the daemum there probably means like at last, or sometimes you see it as at long last. Hercules, as if impulsus, right? So as if having been driven, right? Think of like impulse, by a frenzy, furore, by madness is kind of one way to do it. So again, this sort of craziness comes on him because he can't get the robe off. So almost, or as if driven by madness, he brought himself, say contulet, right? He carried himself or brought himself to Mount Oita, right? So this is a real mountain, right, in Greece. And he brings himself there because he's going to basically build a pyre and jump on, which we're going to see, right? But that is a real place. You can see it in the picture below, right? So he brought himself there and onto a rogum, onto a pyre, right? Se imposuit, he placed himself. So he put himself onto a pyre, which he had extruxed, he had sort of constructed, you might even say, which he had set up is a good way to do it, summa celeritate, with the greatest speed, right? So when it says he put a pyre, right, he hasn't lit it yet, is just something I want to make sure that you kind of get clear on that. So it's just a pile of wood, basically, and you can throw oil or whatever it is that you're going to do, but he set it up and he's getting ready to light it on fire. Okay, because he can't take the pain anymore. Then you have hoc cum feciset, eos qui circum stabant oravit ut rogum quam celerime succenderet. Omnes diu recusabant tandem tamen pastor quidem ad misericordiam inductus ignem subdidit. So it says when he had done this, right? So the cum clause sets up the subjunctive. You have right there feciset, right? So when he had done this, meaning set up the pyre, he oravit, he begged, eos qui circumstabant, so those who, eos qui, those who were standing around. Okay, so he begged those who were standing around so that they might succenderet, right? They might light is kind of one way to think of it. Kindle, sometimes you see, kindle the rogum, the pyre, with the greatest speed, right? Celerime. And since you have quam going with celerime, you actually might even want to do it with as quickly as possible. It's probably a better way to do it when you have quam going with that superlative. And just so you can see it, that ut clause, right, going with the subjunctive, right, succenderet, that's an indirect command. The oravit is kind of setting this up. He's begging or ordering, right? He's telling people to light it. So that indirect command is why you're seeing this subjunctive phrase here, okay? Then you have the omnes diu recusabant, right? So everyone, for a long time, everyone refused or everyone was refusing. So they don't want to do this, okay? Then you have, finally, tandem, however, right? So tandem tamen. So finally, however, a certain shepherd, a pastor quidam, right? A certain shepherd inductus is the perfect passive participle. So having been moved by misericordiam, right? By sadness is kind of one way to do this, or great sadness. It literally means something like compassion, pity, right? It has to do with your heart. So maybe compassion or pity is a better way to do it instead of sadness. So having been moved by pity, he subdidit the ignem, he kindled the fire, right? So Hercules is begging everyone to light the fire. And finally, you have a certain pastor, right? Just some pastor who feels bad for him and actually does it. Then you have the last line. You have tum, dum omnia fumo obscurantur, Hercules densa nube, velatus Ioe in Olympum abreptus est. So you have then, while omnia, while everything obscurantur, literally like was obscured, was blocked or obscured, you could say, fumo, by smoke. So while everything was obscured by the smoke because there's a fire, Hercules, velatus Ioe. So velatus is your perfect passive participle. It means like having been like covered or veiled, concealed. There's a couple ways you can kind of do it. And he's concealed in a densa nube, right, with a dense cloud, right, Yoe. So you have the ablative there to tell you who did the passive verb. By Jove, by Jupiter, or by Zeus, if you're using the Greek form. So having been kind of covered in sort of this dense cloud by Jupiter, he abreptus est, he was snatched up or carried off, you might even say, in Olympum to Olympus, okay? Meaning that he's finally fulfilled his destiny here. He's died and he's become immortal. Okay, so this is a very sort of condensed version, but it hits on a lot of the key points of the death of Hercules and how his story ends, right? He is the son of Zeus, and in the end, after dying, he goes up to Mount Olympus. But I'd encourage you to take a look at the story. If you haven't done it, I know we did a lot of chapters in Hercules, right? 45 of them. But if you haven't, look up the Hercules story again, and particularly his death, and you'll see a little bit more about where this story comes from and how it all works. Okay. But hopefully that made some sense, right? If you have any questions at all in the translation or anything you're not sure of, feel free to put them in the comments below. But otherwise, like I always tell you with this, the more you read, the easier it gets. So hopefully from where you started in the Hercules story till now, you feel a lot more confident doing things like subjunctive, right? That was something that Ritchie really stresses in this particular story. Passive verbs, deponent, all these things that we've seen, but particularly the subjunctive, we've had a heavy dose of it. So you should feel like you're in a pretty good place with it. But again, if you're not, just ask and I'll be happy to help you. But otherwise, good luck. Congrats on finishing the Hercules story. And if you're continuing on with Ritchie's, you can keep reading. You're going to be going on to Jason and the Argonauts is the next story. Good luck with that as you start that journey. Okay. Otherwise, like I said, good luck. Let me know if you need anything else.